Let me just preface all of what I'm going to say with this. Um, I have no issue with the people that live in Israel, and my entire disagreement with American support entirely relies on what currently exists as the government. Um, if you were to ask me if I were some other country, would I support the U.S., I would say no, because the U.S. supports 70% of the world's dictatorships, um, and allows its people to be decimated by student loan debt and other finances that keep the middle class and less fortunate groups at the bottom and allow the upper class to just keep plummeting higher and higher to the seeming never-ending route to a ceiling. So that much is clear. Now, what I find really interesting is that even in cases where people have accused politicians of not having support for Israel. So, for example, you had Cruz, I think in the last couple of weeks of Obama being in office, say that he and um, Secretary of State John Kerry were both anti Israel or enemies of Israel. But he apparently doesn't know or doesn't care to know that under Obama's administration, American foreign aid to Israel increased to 3 billion for the first time in history. Um, and I guess it comes as a surprise that you give all this financial aid to this country. Um, you back most of their ventures. And, if I were to sit here and dig up the evils relating to the Israeli government, I would be sitting here for probably 2 or 3 hours. But I'll put it to you this way: back in the early 1990s, there was an Israeli Prime Minister, Yitzhak Rabin, who tried to do something about the ongoing conflict between his country and the Palestinians. Now, this included measures introduced in the Oslo Accords, which were opposed by the more radical members of the Israeli community after he was murdered and his position was taken over by Benjamin Netanyahu, the latter a firm believer in keeping these feuds going on decade after decade. We've stalled. And it's gotten so bad that even people who claim to support Netanyahu, such as Trump, have been found to state that, yes, he is the bigger problem between peace talks than any of the Palestinian leadership. So, really, the biggest area of backing comes from the belief that if you criticize the country just as I'm doing right now, you will be seen as anti Israel. Just as if you criticize the U.S., you've actually had people go after Noam Chomsky for critiquing American foreign policy under both Democrats and Republicans. Now, anyone who is looking at this objectively will say, oh, well, he's looking at this objectively. He's not playing on either side. But because he doesn't do that, you've actually had commentators try to disparage him for saying, yes, it's messed up that this administration did this and then this one after that did that. They will lambast you for not taking, for not towing the party line. So, for example, if you have a Republican who introduces Medicare for all, I'm supposed to, as a Democrat, which I'm not, but in this hypothetical, I'm supposed to be against it. But if a Democrat does it, it's all right. Just as, I've given critique to American foreign policy when it comes to the drone strikes that we've used in various countries around the world for their killing of innocent people with the claim that, we're hunting terrorists. And this is something that's continued under both the Obama and Bush administrations and Trump as well. But nonetheless, American politicians generally, and this includes senators and governors who are less likely to be asked about their views on foreign policy, have kind of become complacent in just having to not acknowledge any wrongdoing by Israel whatsoever. This is the holy country, And because of that, you're seeing continued just allowing of behaviors that are not conducive to solving anything. This conflict between the Palestinians and the Israelis could have been over decades ago. But with Netanyahu's leadership, he's basically stalled it forever. And it's really unfortunate because you don't have the same system that you have in American elections where you can only serve 2 terms as president and it's over. So you can just keep coming back over and over. Um, so it grosses me out. And this is another one of those issues where it seems as if people really still think it matters what party you vote for, whether it's Democrat or Republican. They're both going to unabashedly support the Israeli government. Again, they're not. It's not about supporting people that live in Israel who have no control over the nasty things that their elected officials are doing. But people really need to start drawing a contrast, saying, if I'm not in the U.S., I'm not going to support the U.S. And I just told you at the beginning of this stream, we're supporting 70% of the world's dictatorships. We've given 3 billion to a country under Obama's administration, all the while having commentators say that relations have suffered critically and they've deteriorated in spite of the fact that we're funding them all this cash, and then telling people domestically, oh, we don't have cash to, distribute to the less fortunate communities. We have to give it to a country that's run by a couple of people who are insistent on keeping the Palestinians in some